Continuing on with strength and power athletes, what about fat? Well, fat is really not used during strength power activity, and we want to just be mindful that we're still getting fat. We want to have fat as a minimal contributor to before and after exercise fueling, because number one, before, it's not going to contribute to performance, and it might even make a person feel sluggish. And we want to be aware about the type of fat that we're consuming. Again, if we can look back at those types of fats when we talked about fats, in I think chapter 4, that we have those omegas, we have some sterols. Fats are necessary. We don't want to get rid of fat in our diet. It does add satiety to our meals, but keep in mind that it's just, if it's part of your daily intake, it doesn't need to be part of your pre and post performance in your athletes. Now, if your athletes eat some nuts and they've got a little fat in it, totally fine, totally fine. But we don't want to focus on fats as being necessary. And we want our fats to be in the form of unsaturated and non-trans fat, right? So we're going to keep that in mind in terms of sources of nutrition that we want to have available. The vitamin and mineral needs, I'm going to look at this a little bit more in the next slide, but basically when we look at vitamins and minerals, there are some benefits that might seem like they're going to be helpful, but it's not necessarily the case. So let's take a look at the ergogenic aids, and this is from chapter 9. So chapter 9 has some anabolic agents, and I thought it was worth identifying at this point, rather than talking about them as a separate chapter, that these are the anabolic or the growth agents that have been identified as potentially beneficial for strength athletes, strength and power athletes. So you'll see that you've got some legal and illegal type things. So some of these anabolic agents are, if you can't take testosterone, what can you take instead? Can you take something that's going to increase testosterone, stimulate testosterone production? Can you stimulate growth hormone production? Can we do something that is gonna assist? Well, there's been a number of claimed actions with human research, and you'll see that the only one that really looks possible is the HMB, beta hydroxy beta methyl butyrate, and that helps with strength and body composition, but it just seems to, the longer you use it, the less impactful that it is. And in some way, it's like caffeine. If you use it all the time, it loses its power. So the beta hydroxy beta methyl butyrate might be short term, but we also have to look to make sure, is it safe, and is it safe for an athlete in terms of getting tested for their sport. Here's some more. You'll look at human research and potential. We see a couple. So here we have creatine increases strength and power that lasts 6 seconds to 4 minutes. Yes, there is a high potential, but there are some people that respond and some people that don't respond. There are stacking programs to look at. There are ways to utilize creatine monohydrate, and there is a high potential, but long-term effects we really don't know. Essential amino acids potentially might be beneficial. There is a high potential, but is it better than just eating food? Not really known. Protein powder, you have to look at, if I was to pick any of these, I would pick some whey powder. And I would look at making sure that there's not too much of other ingredients in there. So we want to look for other ingredients that might be problematic long term, I think I gave you an assignment in the previous chapter that had way too much vitamin E. And if that person, if that athlete took that vitamin E for a long period of time, number one, it's wasteful. Number two, it could be problematic because vitamin E is fat soluble. So we want to look for other added ingredients. But I think this table is pretty helpful with you to be able to look at, what we know so far about our ergogenic aids versus the claims versus what is really been shown to be productive. So we have anabolic and we have anti-catabolic, so anti-breakdown of muscle. So here we have these branched chain amino acids, casein, leucine, tart cherry juice, whey protein. We look at the supplements and what they have. Now this alpha ketoglutarate spares glutamine, which is one of the big amino acids that tends to be utilized by a lot of cells in our body. It's not really been shown that taking glutamine is beneficial. It's potential, but it doesn't have a lot of research in it. We know that branched chain amino acids can help with delaying central fatigue, but it's not quite as strong of a baseline of research. We know that our protein drinks can be good, our protein supplement powders, but we have to make sure that we don't take too much. Leucine possible. Now I will say the tart cherry juice, that's really interesting. And there's something else that's not on here, and that's beet juice. We probably should have gone over beet juice. Beet juice raises nitric oxide, but it's pretty short-lived. It does decrease your potential to decrease hypertension and improve with nitric oxide, which is going to open up the blood vessels. That's, I think, pretty interesting. For performance, I am not really clear that that's going to have a lot of impact for that, but that certainly is something that I'm personally interested in. For fat reducers, that could be something especially for our strength athletes or athletes that are looking to lose weight. Fat does not have any contribution for strength and power. So we want to have a high percentage of muscle, of our mass that we're moving to be able to generate that power output. And so how can you decrease fat? Well, there are some potentials. The caffeine, which is a stimulant, it does increase lipolysis, but it does have a lot of side effects, and if you use it regularly, it doesn't have quite the same impact for performance. But it can cause gastric upset, so that's something, and you might get tested for it. So let's see, ephedrine, no. Should I say that again? No. Don't let your athletes take that. Do not. And I am not familiar with Yohimbe, but that also has a lot of negative side effects, and I would discourage athletes from taking that as well. So as I mentioned, we got to be really careful when we, for our athletes, always dehydration is always something that is not going to be helpful. And I know that in table 13.3 you can take a look at this a little bit better, but you'll see that it does have for cardiovascular system, dehydration has all negative effects on the cardiovascular system. It may or may not impact anaerobic capacity. It might make blood glucose less available. It might have some negative effects in ability to regulate body temperature, decreasing your sweat rate, but yet increasing core temperature. Also, we don't know what impact it has on strength and power, although I will tell you that, athletes, wrestlers will use this technique, used to be much more prevalent, where they would wear those little sauna suits, and right before they weigh in, they'll exercise intensely and sweat, goodness sakes, 10 pounds off, crazy amount of weight, go weigh in for their match, get put in a lower class, and then rehydrate after that, so they have that return, that improvement of the cardiovascular system. And we don't know how fast it takes time to regulate the thermoregulation system. Don't really know if it has a tremendous benefit in terms of muscular strength and power. But there are sports that have worked to decrease that because of the health concerns. I mean, there have been athletes that have died during dehydration practices. I was involved in the Michigan High School Athletic Association in its infancy, when it started doing the practice of weighing and predicting body composition and looking at urine specific gravity when a person got weighed in, so that they couldn't be dehydrated when they did their weigh-in. That was really good work, and that's become that's been accepted across the country. So I felt pretty good about being involved in that work. So hydration is really necessary. The longer the activity, the greater the dehydration. So we're looking most likely in terms of training times. I'm not against having sports drinks if somebody is having difficulty getting their calories in, but for the most part, utilizing that 60-minute activity as water is just fine. And this is a good population to do sweat trials, because you'll be really surprised how much sweat an athlete, a power athlete, for instance, a wrestling athlete, what they'll lose during a practice. You will truly be surprised if you have them weighed. If you want to be mindful about preparing, the plan ahead is sort of an oxymoron. It's like jumbo shrimp, right? Plan means do it ahead of time. Always plan. We should always plan. We should plan and bring snacks with us every day, right? We should plan and have our water bottle ready to go. We should plan and have our breakfast, our oatmeal in the refrigerator so it's good to go. So if you haven't done that, it's really good. And if you put peanut butter in it, you get some protein and carbohydrate. It's really good. So plan ahead, and if an athlete has a long day event, you want to have food with you. You don't know what you're going to get at a concession stand, especially lately with how getting items that are delivered is rough. So do your best to plan ahead for your athletes. Have snacks that they're familiar with, that are not going to have a lot of intestinal upset. If you have the ability, if you don't have a cooler, then non-perishable items are best, but I'll tell you, it's great to have yogurt. It's great to have cool beverages. Cool beverages are absorbed faster than warm. So, if you don't have coolers, I would invest in them immediately. You can get protein bars, energy bars. Just make sure they don't have a lot of fat in them, because that might be upsetting. So if they don't have the chocolate on the outside, that might be the better choice. Fig bars, hard-boiled eggs, all kinds of things. After competition, you really want to get some carbohydrate and protein after. And I am going to suggest to you that if you take a carbohydrate protein before, carbohydrate protein after, you're going to be doing a good job with getting your nutrients into the muscle. If you have that protein, what you eat gets broken down and it doesn't go directly into the muscle. It goes into the bloodstream and it either gets utilized for repair or it gets put aside for as body fat. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to a good snack, good food afterwards. Make sure that your athlete, you know what your athlete's preferences are. If they pack something with them, try real hard not to stop at a place that's going to be fast food. Do your best to have some good snacks with you, and not saying that fast food is bad, but definitely it should not be your first choice. Identify what's going to be your good choice when you leave, before you leave, and again, that's planning ahead. And with that, I'm going to finish chapter 13.